Hi, welcome to Racehouse with me, Jolie.
And me, Darren Reeves.
It's the Austin United States Grand Prix 2023 review. It's a mouthful. I keep calling it the Austin Grand Prix, but it's not. It's the United
Nope.
States Grand Prix.
Correct.
But I think that should change because we've got plenty of US races, and this one has been the one on the calendar for quite a while. And it was a sprint race, big weekend. We had lots of stuff going on. We had practice, we had qualifying, we had sprint qualifying, we had sprint, we had the race. I mean, it's been crazy. We've had the return of people, we've had the DNFs of people. It was kind of everywhere, but a really solid race by Max, great strategy, and a really good race by Lewis, I thought, as well. But things changed at the end. Let's talk about Max. I mean, look, he doesn't need to win, really. He's already won the championship, but it's that fighting spirit he has. He's a born racer. And some of the moves he was making on the Ferraris and the McLarens, the strategy was fantastic. He cruised to an amazing win.
Yeah, I think that Max is a very mature driver now. You know, starting sixth on the grid for the race, having won the sprint the day before, which I have to say was one of the least interesting sprints so far. Just as I'm warming towards the
Boring.
sprint route, yeah,
Oh.
totally boring. Just warming towards the idea of sprint weekends, having had Qatar, and I was just like, oh no. I
And I
didn't
said
enjoy it.
to you in the preview, I said, "Oh no, sprints are great. Oh,
Yep.
it's great. We get another race." And I watched it. I was like, "Oh my god, this is so bad."
It was just a procession. Nobody was taking any risks because there's no pit stops. You know, we can talk about the different things we can do, but Max drove the perfect sprint race from pole position, and I thought he drove the perfect race from sixth position on the grid. He took his time, and he waited for the opportunities. He knew his car would be there better than others, and he just picked everybody off one by one, and finally picking Lando off. Lando had a 7-second lead before that first round of pit stops, and I was like, come on, and at one point you just think, okay, could this be Lando's day? But and with Verstappen starting back in sixth, with that first corner, you just think somebody's going to knock him. But no, it wasn't Max that got knocked. Sadly, it was Piastri, who had a great Qatar weekend, and this weekend's a bit of a shame for him. But and then Verstappen just came good in the first pit stops. Great strategy, going 2 lots of mediums, whereas everybody else went 2 lots of hards. And he just picked everyone off, picked Lando off. But then
Mm.
after the last set of pit stops, that's when Lewis came good. And we thought, do you know what? This is fantastic, to have 2 Brits on
It's
the
the old
podium.
Lewis. It was the old
It was
Lewis.
the old Lewis, and had he had another 2 laps, he whittled that. What did he have? 6 seconds with 6 laps to go with Max once he got past Lando, and he got it down to 1.8 seconds. And with that long back straight with the DRS in it, I just thought, do you know what? He only needed 2 more laps, and he'd have got him. So Max nursed some dodgy brakes, a brake issue, but he just drove sensibly. But Lewis, how do you feel?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it was great to see him on the podium. Great drive. It was the old Lewis. It's like, yes, there's a bit of that Lewis Max because he hasn't been anywhere near Max
Nowhere.
all season. It's
No.
like, well, where's he gone? The Max has been out on his own. So, yeah, it shows the divide between those two and the other cars. But yeah, and then we found out after the race that that both Lewis and Charles Leclerc were disqualified because their plank underneath the car had degraded too much. And as I understand it, the plank is there to basically make sure that the car isn't riding too low to the ground. So it's basically to ensure that teams don't cheat and have crazy too much downforce or getting too much of an advantage. So having this plank is a measure of that, and the FIA will check that after each race. And if the plank is worn down too much, then no, you're disqualified. If you run out of fuel as well, happened to Vettel, didn't it? A couple
That's
seasons
right.
ago,
Yep.
you're disqualified. It's all these things which we keep talking about. There are 4 different races in your head going on at the same time. The track didn't help. I mean, I don't know if you saw it. There's a lot of bumps going on, even in that first corner. I mean,
Yeah.
they need to level that thing out. They were rattling around the place. It was like my mum and her old Ford Orion doing the school run back in the 90s. It reminded me of that kind of rally. It was kind of a rally sometimes. But yeah, so it's a shame. So the result was Lewis and Charles Leclerc were disqualified, not docked points, but disqualified. All that effort for nothing. And it meant that everyone got bumped up the table. So we had Lando then jumped on the second. But we also then had on the other scale the Williams guys, who were 11th and 12th respectively. It was Albon, then Sargent. They got bumped up too. So double points for Williams. I mean, it's not the way that you want to get your points. And for Sainz, it wasn't the way he'd probably want to get his third place. But points are points, and I'm sure they're all very happy with that.
Well, mate, I've got to say, having been in the karting world this year and learnt that rules are rules, okay? They're the same for everybody, and they must be adhered to by the teams, by the drivers, and by the stewards. And, Lucas has benefited from following the rules, and others have got to learn them. And this is a great example. The reason why Red Bull have done so well this season is they've got this ground effects ride height absolutely perfect this season. And with the street racing of Monaco, where Alonso could have won, and Singapore, where Sainz did win, it was because they couldn't lower the ride height. And I think that's why everybody was a bit closer to Red Bull this weekend, because Red Bull played it really safe with the ride height. Clearly, Ferrari and Mercedes didn't. They absolutely put it right to the limit. And obviously, Hamilton and Leclerc's car overstepped the limit. So I'm surprised that Sainz and Russell weren't as well.
I was about to say, Sainz
Yeah.
and Russell, they were okay. Yeah.
Yes. But we don't know how close they were. So apparently it's 10% wear that you're allowed. So they'll measure it
Right.
before the race or whatever the rules are. And then they measure them all at the end, and clearly they'd worn away. But it's because of this, like you've said, the bumping of the track. But apparently this track is really prone to lots of land movement. Apparently it's clay that absorbs lots of water but has lots of heat as well. So there's lots and lots of changes to it, extremes. And apparently that affects how the lie of the land works. So apparently, and that's what they're putting it down to. But ultimately, Red Bull got it right again, didn't they? And to be fair to Perez, fourth
He did well
after the disqualifications. Yeah. That's a great result for Perez as well. So from a Red Bull perspective, they raised the ride height, played it safe. They had some brake issues. They dealt with those well. I think they had a fantastic weekend this weekend. And I'm just so frustrated for Lewis when he's had his best weekend of the whole season, and then it's undone by a technical infringement that nobody would have known about until after the race. But clearly they just pushed that ride height too close to the tolerance line. But mate, I just want to say as well that you touched on Williams. Logan Sargent, his first points in Formula One. Do you know what? Everybody likes Logan, but he's just had no luck at all go his way until this race. So well done, Logan.
Yeah, well done, Logan. Yeah, no, definitely. He's done proud. And also, I was going to jump in and just say that is also the first points for an American driver for 30 years. Since who?
Well, I'm going to say Michael Andretti.
Yes.
Come on.
Flavor of the month. Yes, flavor of the year. Andretti. He's all over the place. And I think he managed to get 4 points or something, or 3 points.
He had a very poor season or half a season for McLaren. That's what I can remember. Early 90s, maybe mid 90s.
Yeah. But he got some points 30 years ago. So that's the last time. And Andretti have said with the new team he wants to create, he wants at least one American driver. So Logan, you never know.
Yeah, well, do you know what? Over a season, luck sort of balances itself out. Good, bad, and the ugly. And well done. I'm really pleased for him. I'm pleased for Williams, and it just really pleased for Yuki Tsunoda as well.
Oh, and why is that?
Well, Yuki, what did he have? 3 points all season. And with the pressures of Liam Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo in the team, both of them, trying to beat Yuki. Yuki came in with an 8th place, 5 points, 4 points plus fastest lap. Yuki got fastest lap on the last lap. I don't know how he did it because it wasn't like he pitted or anything at the end. I couldn't
Couldn't he have
work
done
it
that
out
for
at
the rest
all.
of the race? Couldn't he have done
Well,
that earlier?
how did it happen? It can only be related to fuel, and he'd looked after his tyres. But 5 points for Yuki, so up to 8 points now. Well done, Yuki.
Well
But
done, Yuki. And also to see the difference between him and his teammate who has
yes,
returned. That's right. Daniel Ricciardo has returned. This was the first race that he's been in since, what was it?
Holland. Well,
Singapore?
he
So
he
where did he
he
crash?
he injured himself in Zandvoort, which is when they came back
Zandvoort.
after the summer break qualifying. So his previous race would have been Spa just before the break.
Long time ago. It feels
It
like a
is,
long
yeah,
time ago. We've done
yeah.
plenty of podcasts since then. Yeah, well, he returned, and it wasn't really his weekend at all. I mean, he was stone last after the DNFs. Not really the comeback he would have wanted. It's nice to see him back at the paddock, but oof, yeah, that's going to be a bit.
Yeah,
And they're saying that he might be a new Max companion. I come on, I don't know. This could be his last season.
yeah. I'm not seeing it. I'm just looking at how far behind he was, but it just marked as
He was
plus
lapped. He was
one
lapped.
one lap.
Is
Yeah,
plus
yeah,
one.
yeah. It
Yeah,
doesn't even tell me. No, I think that's a poor return for Ricardo. I'm disappointed because I love him. I think he's brilliant for the sport. He's a brilliant energy to have in the pit
great
lane,
guy.
and we want characters in Formula One, and we are deprived of characters, rock stars and gladiators and all this stuff a little bit because of money, really. So I think character needs to shine through, and he's just got an infectious smile that makes everybody happier.
He'd
So
be a great
come on,
ambassador. Yeah.
yeah, come on, Daniel. You got to do it, or let Liam Lawson in that car. But don't waste these opportunities. But maybe we just don't know, do we? Maybe he's slightly unfit. Maybe he's unmatched fit. Maybe his hands haven't quite. But last, when Yuki got 8th, that's the telling bit for me. If Yuki was with him as well at the back, we'd just say it was the slowest car. But no.
No, I think Yuki also had a bit of a rock up the bum. He's like, "Oh, Daniel's back. I need to make sure I get some points here," and he did. So
Yeah.
Yuki stayed in the safe zone, I'd say. Daniel Ricciardo did say as well, because people were saying about Liam Lawson, and he said, "Look, you did a fantastic job. Very thankful, but he's still a rookie. He's still got many years of learning to do. So he'll have his time." But I think that was a bit of a defensive stance there, because actually, if I was in charge of the team, I'd have Liam.
Yeah.
But then you're going to get this absurd situation where Daniel Ricciardo is just paid to do nothing.
Yep.
Like it's paid millions to sit around on the sidelines and watching it on TV. It's a very strange position. I guess he's there next year, Daniel and Yuki, the lineup. But yeah, I don't know. Interesting one. Also interesting is to see. I mean, we've had the whole thing about track limits this year, which has been a real bone of contention. And again, the racers have got to really make sure they're on the track, especially if they're overtaken. They have to give a place back. And they can have their laps deleted during qualification as well, which we saw with Leclerc. He benefited from that when Max had his deleted. But what was the saga with the white lines this weekend?
Well, I've said it already in this podcast. Rules are rules. We all know what they are at the start. But I think in today's world of technology, a little bit like VAR in football, we can monitor things so much better than we could in years gone by, decades gone by. These track limits, the rules are stay in the white lines and race. If you don't
Simple.
stay in the white lines, then you will have your lap deleted. And if you pass somebody and take an unfair advantage, give it back or take a penalty. It's the same for everybody. So why are we moaning when the rules are adhered to and the stewards do their job? I think it's a good thing. It's just frustrating that when you're watching it, you just want to see them go for it. But the problem is in old tracks, we had gravel traps and bits of grass. And if you touched the gravel or the grass, you were out. The problem is now we've got such big runoff areas, which is a safety thing. It's a good thing. We've got Tech Pro barriers. The fear for the driver, they've got to look at it and go, do you know what? If I just get past this guy and then take a 5-second penalty at the end of the race, Well, I've just got to get 5 seconds in front of him, and then it's all worked out. So the penalties are not big enough, really, for me. And we, as spectators, it's frustrated when it happens to your drivers. But when it happens to Max and gets a 5 second penalty, we're all cheering. Well, most of us, apart from our friends over in Holland, of course. But these are the rules. We know what they are. Stop moaning. Let's.
Yeah.
But I've got a problem with changing the rules halfway through a weekend. So teams, they plan their strategies, for weeks and weeks, months and months ahead. They're looking at what's going on, and as the season unfolds and different cars evolve differently, so they will have been looking at the strategies for the US Grand Prix and for Qatar last week. But they've changed the rules halfway through the weekend. Oh, well, we've got too many track limits, so let's make the line twice as thick. So Max had that line been made thick on Friday morning before qualifying, Max would have been on pole position for the race.
Mm.
But it wasn't, so he had his lap deleted and therefore started sixth. But then the next day they've thickened it up. What are we doing here? Are we changing the rules because to
Yeah.
advantage certain people here? I don't think that's right. Change it next year. Learn from the weekend, but don't change it during a weekend. And at Qatar they changed the rules as well halfway through by changing the tire strategies because of these
Mm.
sort of jagged curbs. So suddenly everybody had to do a three stop strategy. But they've been planning these for weeks and months beforehand. Change it next year. Let everybody sort it out for themselves. Tell them that the tyre life is only 18 laps, but don't change the blimmin' rules, halfway
Mm.
through a weekend. So there we are, mate. That's my little high horse moment of
Yeah.
Stuart. Do your job. We all know the rules. Don't change the rules halfway through a weekend.
I agree. I agree with that. It's jumpers for goalposts. It's kind of, you can't really do that because you're right. So much strategy, so much thinking, so much analysis is done. We think they just jump in a car and off they go. It's not. You have to really look at so many variables for every track, and each track has their own characteristics. It has its own weather. It has its own strategy itself. So to suddenly say, oh no, you can't do that, and that's that now. I mean, like, it's confusing. So
Yeah.
the drivers are out there to race, but they've got all this other stuff they've got to think about. And then look what happened with Lewis. I mean, again, the plank thing. How could he have known that happened? Yes,
No.
Maybe they had a low ride height, but it didn't happen to Sainz and Russell. So
That's
it's
right.
a strange one.
Well, I think it's down to maybe the lines they were taking. It's quite, every driver will take a slightly different line at times, and he just clearly took a bumpier line, even maybe just in 2 or 3 laps more than Russell, and that was the difference between it. And I'm sure it was probably when the car's a bit heavier as well with fuel, it makes a difference. But the rules are 10% wear. Anything over 10%, you're disqualified. They need to allow for it. Well, there were 18 cars out there that did allow for it and didn't get disqualified. So
Yeah.
it's got to be fair. It makes it fair for everyone. It's just frustrating when it's your driver that gets disqualified.
Yeah, and it has to be fair. All the teams are fighting. I mean, one team that was fighting as well this weekend was McLaren. Mixed, really, results for them. Lando, obviously, great race. I mean, he could have actually won that race, I think.
Yes.
Certainly he could have. There were some great moments there. Again, Red Bull was just so good with their strategy. They had a faster car at the end of the day. But Piastri, unfortunately, I think I missed it. Did he collided, didn't he? And then he had to kind of like.
So on turn 2, so they came out of that hairpin at turn 1, and then basically Ocon came across and clipped the side pod. But basically Piastri's rear tires, I think, caught Ocon's side pod, and Ocon's front tires caught Piastri's side pod, which led to overheating of the engine. So it's amazing, again, the different, just slight changes. You look at it and you think, my God, how can that possibly mean a retirement when you just see a little bit of damage on the side pod? But of course, it's aerodynamics, and it's, the engine is running hot, the air is running fast, so many different variables that's how on the edge they are. So sadly, Ocon retired first, and then Piastri had to retire after for what was just an innocuous tap really, but at high speed.
Yeah, it's weird because you think if that happened in your car on the street, well, you could keep going. What's got to do with the engine? But it's
Yeah.
not like that. That these cars, even though carbon fiber is very strong, at those speeds and crashing against another car at 200 miles an hour, things are going to break off, and it completely affects the performance of the car. So that's why you see front wings having to be replaced. But yeah, to have to retire the car is really the driver's worst nightmare. Well, maybe not the worst nightmare. Maybe the worst nightmare is having an amazing race and then getting disqualified for something out of your control.
Yeah.
That's probably worse. But overall, it was amazing. I thought it was a really good race. I thought the weather was fantastic. The place looked amazing, as predicted. Hundreds of thousands of people. I know there were plenty of stars there as well. You had Rory McIlroy. Was there, who's now part owner of Alpine, and Anthony Joshua was there as well. You could tell they're quite new to the sport because they haven't quite got the knowledge there. There was a bit of like, well, this is like huge scale, and these guys are used to big spectacles. So I think they're going to be learning a lot more. I know Ocon said that he'd been texting Ryan Reynolds as well, who I didn't see at
No,
the track.
he didn't seem to be there. It's probably in Wrexham.
It's in Wrexham, yeah, down the turf, yeah, which is great, by the way. I've been, so you should go and check it out. It's quite fun. So there's a new era, this of the celebrity kind of era creeping in more and more. Now they're owners. I mean, Tom Cruise might come on and take a stake of somewhere, Mercedes or something. I don't know. This could be the new frontier, the new celebrity football team. So we'll see. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with Alpine next year and how all these people are going to be promoting and essentially ambassadors. I think they're going to be ambassadors of Alpine and spread the word. And there were after show concerts, including your bosses, Queen.
Yes.
They played, and I heard they absolutely raised the roof, brought the place down as usual.
Well,
In good Queen fashion.
they always do. Absolutely. Like everybody knows a bit of Queen, and it's just part of our DNA, really. For "We Are the Champions" and "We Will Rock You" and all these songs. So yeah, they played Saturday night at the circuit. So I had some friends that went along to that and had a great time. So good on them. I say a little bit of jealousy crept in for me having them there and the Formula One world, and I'm at home watching on the TV. But at the end of the day, you get such a fantastic experience of watching these things on television. You know more about the race from watching it on the television than you
So
do
close.
in the stands. But it's just a different experience. And I've got to say, Kota is becoming one of my favorite circuits on the calendar. It doesn't have the history, but there's something brilliant about those turns 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone. You've got the hairpin and then into the really long straight with DRS, with a great overtaking opportunity into that final section with that really high, tall tower where they did the national anthem from. I thought that was a great version with acoustic guitar and vocal, as opposed to what we had. As opposed to what we had in Silverstone this year with Damian Lewis doing
I
it for
think
the
that's
movie.
part of the film. I think it must be part of the movie. I hope it's part of the movie.
Come on.
Otherwise,
We're dealing with the top end of world sport technology quality. You and I, as musicians and entertainers, that was not top quality, Joe. And honestly, I was shocked. Come on, it's got to be better.
I'm
than
sure
that.
that's a comedy moment in the film. I'm sure.
Well, we'll find out, won't we?
We'll find out when Brad Pitt finally gets to release it. One thing I did notice on the grid, though, they had dueling pianos on the track.
Right. So you and I need to discuss this. So dueling pianos on the track for the before the race, playing right at the front. I'm surprised they didn't do the national anthem, but they were doing they were singing
Elton
"Don't Stop Believing." They were doing Benny and the Jets, and they were all dressed up. Joe, come on. We need to be doing this.
We need to be doing this. I didn't expect. I was crazy. I mean, they weren't branded. They could have branded them, I think. But and I've got a sneaking suspicion they're probably from Pete's, the Julian Pianos bar in Austin, Texas, where we got inspiration. Well, Holland had inspiration to start dueling pianos in Holland, and then I went over there, played there in that format, and then brought it to the UK, and then a few others brought their format too. So dueling pianos with two pianos side by side, drums in the middle, make your request. And we've got some more gigs lined up soon. So yeah, party pianos. There you go. There's a plug. My turn for a plug. There you go.
There it is, mate. And not being funny, Joe, with Vegas coming up, we've got the Dueling Pianos bar in the New York hotel in Vegas. Well, Vegas, yeah, and the Paris hotel as well. So, and my buddy Kyle Martin, who does his Billy Joel show out there called The Piano Man. So there's another plug for him. They need to be having this on every race, Joe, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, exactly. It fits everywhere. Well, we'll see about Abu Dhabi. See if they want to put dueling pianos on the track there. We have the pianos in Abu Dhabi, so that could work. No, it's a great thing. You and I work in music and events, and these are the biggest events really in the. You think about Glastonbury, right? Okay, Glastonbury has what, a couple of 100,000 people? I don't know the exact thing. Maybe 250,000 people. This circuit has 450,000 people. Silverstone is about the same.
Yes.
This is happening every year, 23, 24 times a year. This is the scale of this. And if you haven't been to an F1 circuit to kind of experience it, please go to one or plan the next one that's near you, because it is such an amazing atmosphere to go to feel it. It's like going to a World Cup or something. It's a carnival atmosphere. Some of them, you have camping as well. So you go into the night, well into the night with local bands and food and drink and everything. It's a really great thing. It's a family affair. It's all that as well as the racing, but meeting people, talking, having gentle banter between teams, is all part of it. So yeah, we look forward to going to our next race, and also commenting on the next races. Do we have any shout outs, Darren?
Well, today I don't think I've got any shout outs. I've mentioned my mate Kyle in Vegas. We've mentioned Queen, but I just think that I was going to say something now, and it's completely gone from me about it. But no, I think the only thing we haven't mentioned, Joe, is Aston Martin, and I think we've got to actually do a shout out for Lance Stroll getting 7th place.
No, it's not true. It's not true. It's terrible. No, boo. Yeah, I know. I wrote it down.
Lance Stroll has got a 7th place. He's got a points finish. Alonso didn't finish. He's I can't remember the reason now why he had to retire. But they have fallen off a cliff from the first half of this season. It's been and it's purely development. But what I did notice was they bought some upgrades, and Alonso ditched them for the Sunday race, and his car was much better. So, upgrades are meant to improve things, but because they can't test anything, and especially where we only had FP1 this weekend, straight into qualifying, straight into sprint shootouts, you're just constantly competing rather than practicing, testing, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. I think it's really hard for the development of these teams to know when something's going to work and when it isn't. And we've seen this weekend, Stroll just drove his car well for the first time in a long, long time. Alonso, unlucky with a DNF and failure. Alonso's always going to drive well. But I think we have to give Stroll his due. He did well this weekend, and they need 2 cars finishing in the points consistently, any team, to do well in the constructors. And that's what we're seeing from...
Yeah. No, you're right. Alonso's got so many points now. What is he, 4th, 5th in the championship, something like that? Maybe
he's just been over. He's 4th in the championship, but I think Lando Norris is now only
Lando's going to
24 points behind him.
This is the thing. If Aston are not going to perform, Lando is going to get up there. He could even, I don't know how the maths works, but he could, with more second places, more podiums, he could maybe get up to certainly 4th, I think.
He's 42 points behind Lewis, but I think the Mercedes and Ferrari have got enough to see them through. But Aston Martin are just falling backwards so much. But it might be because they
Mm.
they bought upgrades this weekend, so clearly they're still looking at this year. There's a big difference between finishing. Well, we've already discussed the money is the constructors' championship. It is a team event,
Mm.
even though we follow the drivers. But they're struggling, and they just need to get to the end of the season and know where they stand, I suppose. But it's still an improvement on last year.
Well done, Lance. Go on. I said it.
There it is. There it is.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, we will be back on that bombshell to steal from Clarkson. Next time on Racehouse, we do the Mexican Grand Prix preview. Sergio Perez, it's his home race. Rumors that he may announce his retirement or his retirement from Red Bull. So I don't think it will happen. He's second in the championship. Give the guy a break.
Yeah.
Come on. But we will chat about that when we know a bit more. We'll get off the heat of sizzling. Join us then for Racehouse with me, Jolie.
And me, Darren Reeves.